Under the clear Colorado sky, the Grant Ranch stood out against the distant mountains, its wooden houses and barns defying the solitude of the arid lands. After 5 years of marriage, William Grant was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. His wife, Margaret, a young woman with green eyes and brown hair, did her best to create a welcoming home in that hostile environment. But William, a man deeply scarred by years of struggling for survival in the West, yearned for an heir to carry on his legacy. When years passed without Margaret becoming pregnant, his patience ran out. "I want you out of here, Margaret. You're a barren woman, incapable of giving me a child," he roared, his calloused hands shaking with rage. "You're no longer fit for this place." Margaret fought back tears, her voice firm in the face of her husband's cruelty. "William, please have mercy. I love him, and this is my home too." But the rude farmer was unmoved. With a nod, she ordered her men to drive her away without delay. Margaret was forced to leave everything behind, clutching only a small bag containing a few belongings. 6 years passed. On a busy Denver street, Margaret walked with purposeful steps, carrying in her arms a boy of about 4 years old. His green eyes shone with a strength hidden from his former age. There was pain in her heart, but also a new determination. It was then that William Grant spotted her, immediately recognizing that once familiar face. His breath hitched, shock gripping him. Desperately he followed her, watching the scene with incredulous eyes. Entering a modest home, Margaret carefully opened the door, kissing the boy's forehead. She affectionately called him Tommy, and the boy seemed as comfortable in her arms as a baby chick in its nest. When William approached and saw the child's face for the first time, his entire world seemed to collapse. Tommy was clearly mixed race, with his Apache mother's tan skin and delicate features combined with his white father's light eyes and blonde hair. Margaret, the woman he had rejected so many years ago, had found a new husband and adopted the boy as her own. Unable to believe his eyes, William stood frozen, tears streaming down his aging face. He finally realized that the infertility problem lay not with Margaret, but with himself. All the anger and resentment that had consumed him gave way to profound shame and regret. Margaret, now a stronger and more confident woman, observed the scene with compassionate eyes. Although she never forgot the pain William had caused her, she found it in her heart to forgive him. After all, she had built a new life, a family that loved and accepted her for who she was. After long moments of silence, William finally approached, his voice choked with emotion. "Margaret, my God, what have I done to you?" He knelt before her, begging for forgiveness. "I was so blind, so arrogant. I never imagined the problem was mine, not yours." Margaret placed a gentle hand on her ex-husband's shoulder, her voice soft as the breeze blowing through the streets of Denver. "I forgive you, William, but my place is now with this new family." She looked lovingly at Tommy, who watched her curiously. William nodded slowly, defeat etched on his face. He knew there was no longer a place for him in Margaret's life. Stiffly rising, William turned and left, carrying the weight of his mistakes and the lesson of redemption he had just witnessed. The cold, merciless west wind accompanied his solitary steps. The Colorado sun shone warmly on the rolling hills as William Grant left his modest Denver home, his heart heavy with regret. His slow steps on the wooden sidewalk echoed the grief that consumed him. During the years of loneliness since he had driven Margaret from his ranch, William had hardened into a bitter and lonely man. But now, seeing the woman he had loved so much, happy and fulfilled in her new family, his arrogance had vanished like smoke. As he walked through the busy streets, William recalled the events that had led him to this moment. His marriage to Margaret, once full of hope, had been consumed by obsession with an heir who never arrived. He had blamed her, unable to see his own failure. On that fateful day, William had given in to anger and frustration, throwing Margaret out of his home. Now, confronted with the truth, he realized how wrong he had been. The image of the mixed-race child in his ex-wife's arms, Tommy, was a painful reminder of his own blindness. William knew there was no place for him in Margaret's new life. She had forgiven him, but his choices had condemned him to a loneliness that now seemed endless. As he walked, the people around him went on with their lives, indifferent to his pain. Upon reaching the edge of town, William found his horse, a faithful companion since his ranch days. Mounting it, he set off westward, leaving behind the memory of his broken marriage. The icy wind in his face could not quell the storm raging within him. Riding across the arid plains took him back to his youth, when the struggle for survival was his only concern. But now, the nostalgia for that time had given way to a deep melancholy. William felt lost, devoid of the sense of purpose that had guided him for so long. As he advanced through the desert, his mind wandered between memories of his past and the uncertainty of his future. He wondered if he would ever have the chance to redeem his mistakes, to rebuild the bonds he had destroyed. In the distance, William spotted the silhouette of his old property, the Grant Ranch, standing out against the orange dusk sky. Feeling a pang in his chest, he decided to turn away, unable to face that place that brought back so many memories. Instead, William headed toward a small pioneer community where he intended to seek shelter and refuge. Perhaps there, far from the ghosts of his past, he could find the strength to start over. Arriving in the city, William tethered his horse and walked through the dusty streets, observing the unfamiliar faces that crossed his path. He felt like a stranger in this place, a shadow of the man he once was. His search led him to a saloon, one of the few establishments still open at that hour. Entering, William was greeted by curious glances from the patrons. Sitting in a corner, he ordered a glass of whiskey, hoping the alcohol might, at least temporarily, ease the pain that tormented him. As he drank, William reflected on the choices that had brought him to this point. He had been so blind and arrogant, so determined to maintain his legacy, that he had forgotten what truly mattered. Now, seeing Margaret happy with her new family, he understood how empty his own life had become. William wished he could go back in time, change his actions, and prevent this tragedy from unfolding. But the past was beyond his reach, and he would have to find the strength to move forward, despite the guilt that consumed him. As the night wore on, the saloon emptied, leaving William alone with his thoughts. Looking at the contents of his glass, he wondered if he would be able to rebuild his life, to find a new purpose that would free him from this bitterness. When he finally got up to retire, William knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to try. He would seek refuge in that small community, seeking the redemption he so desperately needed. Perhaps there, far from the ranch and all its memories, he could find the peace he'd been missing. With heavy steps, William left the saloon, walking through the deserted streets toward the shelter that awaited him. The west wind blew gently, as if nature were trying to comfort him on his journey toward redemption. The sun was already setting on the horizon when William Grant arrived at the small pioneer community, his horse weary and his boots dusty. As he tied up the animal, his weary eyes swept the narrow, dusty streets, searching for a place where he could find shelter and peace. His heart still weighed heavily on the image of Margaret and the mixed-race boy, Tommy, who had confronted him with the truth about his own infertility. That painful revelation had shaken all his beliefs, tearing down the wall of pride and arrogance he had built over the years. William knew he couldn't return to his ranch, for there he would only find the shadow of his past and the weight of his mistakes. He needed a fresh start, away from the familiar environment that suffocated him. It was then that his eyes spotted a modest hotel at the end of the main street. Walking slowly, William entered the dimly lit lobby, where he was greeted by a middle-aged man behind the counter. After negotiating a room for a few nights, the old farmer climbed the worn stairs, feeling the weariness of his soul weighing on each step. Entering the small room, William set his suitcase down on the bed with its threadbare sheets. Everything there seemed simple and devoid of any comfort, but at that moment, this room was all he had. Collapsing onto the mattress, William finally let the tears stream down his aging face. In that solitude, he allowed himself to revisit the moments that had brought him here. He remembered the day he had driven Margaret from his home, blinded by his obsession with an heir who never arrived. Now, knowing that the problem had been his, not his wife's, William felt consumed by shame and regret. Thinking of the new life Margaret had built, with a loving husband and a son she called her own, William couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. He longed to have had the chance to experience the love and happiness he had been denied. But his own actions had condemned him to a loneliness that seemed increasingly difficult to bear. As the night wore on, William became lost in thought, recalling the years of struggle and sacrifice that had earned him the ranch, but which had failed to fill the void in his heart. The legacy he had cherished so dearly now seemed empty and meaningless. Hearing the noises from the hotel, William stood and walked toward the dusty window. Gazing at the dim lights of the small town, he wondered if he would ever have the opportunity to redeem himself, to find a new purpose that would restore his lost dignity. Then a soft knock on the door interrupted his reverie. Upon answering, William found the hotel owner holding a tray with a simple meal. "Mr. Grant, I thought you might be hungry," the man said, his expression sympathetic. "I know it's hard to come to a new city, but I hope you find the rest you seek here." William nodded, accepting the tray gratefully. This unexpected gesture of kindness touched him, reminding him that even in the midst of loneliness, there was still kindness and compassion in this world. As he savored his meal, William pondered what he would do next. He needed to find a place where he could rebuild his life, away from the memories that tormented him. Perhaps in this small community he could find a new home, a chance to start over. After finishing his meal, William walked back to the window, watching the shadows of the houses cast against the darkening sky. The silence of the night was broken only by the distant sound of voices and the occasional neigh of a horse. In that moment of tranquility, William felt a strange peace envelop him. For the first time since being driven from his ranch, he allowed himself to believe that perhaps there was a chance for redemption. Perhaps there, in that unfamiliar city, he could find the strength to overcome his past mistakes. With this new determination, William lay down on the bed, his body finally relaxing after the long journey. As his eyes closed, he hoped that when he woke, the weight of his guilt would seem a little lighter. Perhaps in this new place, he might find an opportunity to rebuild his life, and perhaps even a chance for forgiveness. Dawn arrived softly, the first rays of sunlight filtering through the worn curtains of the hotel room. William Grant opened his eyes slowly, feeling more rested than he had in years. Rising, he walked to the window, watching the activity begin to fill the streets. This small community seemed so far from his ranch in Colorado, and William hoped that distance would bring him the peace he so desperately needed. After washing and dressing, William descended the stairs to the hotel lobby. The owner greeted him with a friendly smile and offered him breakfast. William gladly accepted, sitting at one of the worn wooden tables. As he sipped his hot coffee, his eyes roamed the room, observing the unfamiliar faces that passed by. These people seemed so oblivious to his pain, so distant from his own internal struggles. William felt, in a way, relieved by this. After finishing the meal, William got up and went to the counter, where the hotel owner was waiting for him. "I must thank you for your hospitality, sir. I hope to stay here for a few days, if possible." The man nodded with an understanding smile. "Of course, Mr. Grant. Stay as long as you need. This city might be just what you need right now." William thanked her, his heart filling with hope. Perhaps there he could find the refuge he so desperately sought, the chance to rebuild his life, and perhaps even the opportunity to one day look back on his past without the shadow of guilt. Leaving the hotel, William walked through the streets of the small town, carefully observing every detail around him. The dry air and wind-blown dust reminded him strongly of his ranch, but somehow the similarity didn't bother him. This place seemed to offer him the tranquility he so desperately craved. As he walked, William noticed a small supply store at the end of the main street. Deciding to explore, he entered the establishment, where a friendly man greeted him with a nod. Looking at the shelves filled with groceries, tools, and other essentials, William felt a familiar sense of purpose wash over him. Perhaps there, in this small community, he could find an opportunity to start over, to reinvent himself. Who knows, maybe even find a new home. With this thought in mind, William headed to the counter, ready to chat with the shop owner. Perhaps this was the chance he needed to take the first step toward redemption. William spent the next few days exploring the small community, carefully observing every detail around him. The dusty streets, unfamiliar faces, and slower pace of the place gradually began to soothe his restless spirit. He frequented the supply store daily, establishing a friendship with the friendly owner, a man named John. Little by little, William felt increasingly comfortable in this environment, far from the memories that haunted him on his Colorado ranch. One day, while helping John organize the shelves, William noticed a poster hanging on the wall of the establishment. It advertised a job opening on the farm of one of the local farmers. Without hesitation, William asked for more information. "Oh, yes, Mr. Wilkins is in need of an experienced cowboy," John explained with a smile. "He has a property a few miles from here and needs someone reliable to tend the cattle." William felt a spark of hope ignite in his chest. This could be the opportunity he'd been searching for. A chance to start over, reinvent himself, and perhaps find a new purpose in life. Thanking John, William set off for Mr. Wilkins's farm, determined to introduce himself and apply for the position. Upon arriving, he was greeted by a middle-aged man, his face hardened from years of hard work under the scorching sun. "So, you're the William Grant John told me about," Wilkins said, sizing him up critically. "I've heard good things about your cattle experience. Are you interested in the position?" William nodded, his heart racing. "Yes, sir. I'd really like to work here if you'll have me." Wilkins was silent for a moment, seemingly considering the proposal. Finally, he extended his hand to William. "Welcome to my farm, young man. You start tomorrow." William shook the farmer's calloused hand, feeling immense relief wash over him. This was his chance to start over, to prove he still had value and was capable of redeeming himself for the mistakes of the past. In the following days, William devoted himself entirely to farm work. He rode his horse across the vast pastures, tending the cattle with the same determination he had once dedicated to his own ranch. Little by little, the rhythm of the simple life and contact with nature began to ease the weight of his guilt. In his spare time, William would often sit on a bench near the fence, watching the sunset paint the sky with vibrant colors. It was in these moments of contemplation that he allowed his memories to flood back, reliving the events that had brought him here. The image of Margaret and little Tommy still haunted him, reminding him of the love he had wasted and the opportunity he had been denied. But little by little, William felt this pain begin to transform into determination. He knew he had to move on, find a way to rebuild his life. One afternoon, while William was tending the cattle, Mr. Wilkins approached, his expression thoughtful. "So, Grant, I've noticed you're a man of few words, but you work hard and with dedication. May I ask what brought you here?" William hesitated for a moment, knowing this was an opportunity to open up and perhaps find the support he so desperately needed. "Well, Mr. Wilkins, I've made mistakes in the past that have cost me dearly," William began, his voice thick with emotion. "I banished my wife from our home because I believed she was incapable of providing me with an heir, but I discovered, too late, that the problem was mine, not hers." Wilkins listened silently, his eyes filled with compassion. William continued, feeling a sense of relief at sharing the burden that had plagued him for so long. "Now I see the happiness Margaret has found in her new family, and I deeply regret everything I did. I came here looking for a chance to start over, to find a new purpose for my life." The farmer nodded slowly, placing a hand on William's shoulder. I understand, boy. We all make mistakes that haunt us for a long time. The important thing is to have the courage to face them and move on. William felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Those words of understanding and support meant so much more than William could ever express. Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. I really appreciate the opportunity you've given me. I promise I won't let you down. The farmer smiled, patting William on the back. I know you won't, Grant. Now come on, we have a lot of work to do. As they resumed their tasks, William felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time since arriving in that community, he truly believed he could find the redemption he so desperately sought. As the days passed, William became increasingly integrated into the farm routine. He appreciated the simplicity of life, the peaceful pace, and the sense of belonging that was beginning to blossom in his heart. In the late afternoons, as the sun began to set, William would sit on his horse and ride through the pastures, watching the cattle graze peacefully. It was in these moments of solitude that he found the peace he had long sought. One day, while riding, William spotted a lone figure sitting on a fence in the distance. As he approached, he recognized the aged face of a man who seemed as lost as he was. "Good afternoon," William greeted, stopping his horse. "May I join you?" The man looked up, his eyes reflecting a familiar pain. "Of course, young man. Make yourself at home." William tied his horse and sat beside the stranger, watching the sunset in silence for a few moments. Eventually, the man turned to him, his voice trembling with emotion. "My name is Daniel. I'm also trying to start over here, after losing everything I had." William nodded, feeling a wave of empathy wash over him. "I understand, Daniel. I know that feeling too." The two men remained silent, watching the beauty of the sunset together. At that moment, William felt that perhaps he was not alone in his journey of redemption. Who knows, there in that small community, he might find not only a new home, but also the possibility of rebuilding bonds and creating new meaning in his life. The passing days on Mr. Wilkins's farm brought William Grant a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in a long time. As he tended the cattle and helped with the daily chores, the weight of his past seemed to lift, giving way to a growing sense of peace. One day during a late afternoon meal, William noticed his master's thoughtful expression. The farmer remained silent for a few moments before turning to William with an unexpected question. "Tell me, Grant, have you ever thought about buying your own land and starting over here?" William blinked, surprised by the question. I don't know if I can do something like that, Mr. Wilkins. My ranch in Colorado was lost long ago." The farmer nodded slowly. "I see. But you see, you're a hard-working, honest man. I'm sure with your experience you could prosper here." William fell silent, pondering Wilkins's words. Owning his own land again seemed like a distant dream, something he had given up on in the past. "You're offering me an opportunity, is that it?" William asked, hope beginning to stir in his chest. Wilkins smiled, extending his hand across the table. "Yes, sir. I have a parcel of land a few miles from here that's for sale. If you're interested, I can introduce you to the owner and see if we can work out a deal." William shook his boss's calloused hand, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. "I would be honored, Mr. Wilkins. This might be just the chance I need." In the following days, William accompanied Wilkins to the property in question. It was a large area with fertile pastures and a small wooden house. As he walked along the edge of the land, William felt a mix of emotions, the fear of failure mixed with the hope of starting over. When they finally reached an agreement with the owner, William signed the documents with trembling hands. This piece of land would be his new home, the chance to rebuild his life and, who knows, find the redemption he'd been searching for. Over the next few days, William devoted himself entirely to renovating the small house and preparing for the move. He could hardly believe that after so many years of defeat and bitterness, he was about to become a landowner again. As he loaded his few possessions into his wagon, William turned to Mr. Wilkins, his expression full of gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you for this opportunity, sir. You have no idea how much it means to me." Wilkins placed a hand on William's shoulder, his gaze revealing a deep understanding. "You deserve this chance, Grant. I hope you can find the peace you so desperately seek here." William nodded, feeling a lump form in his throat. Before leaving, he asked about his nearest neighbor, hoping this new beginning would bring him some comfort. "Oh, yes. Your closest neighbors are a couple of newcomers," Wilkins informed her. "They bought the property south of yours a few months ago. They seem like nice people." William nodded, feeling a sudden pang of curiosity. Perhaps these new neighbors could become allies in this journey of rebuilding. Without further ado, he set off toward his new land, his heart filled with hope. Upon arriving, William dismounted the wagon and walked slowly toward the small house. The afternoon sun cast soft shadows on the wooden walls, and the sound of the wind blowing through the trees brought him a sense of tranquility. Entering the home, William noticed that despite its simplicity, everything seemed impeccably clean and organized. The previous owner had likely taken good care of the place. Setting down his few possessions, William allowed himself to sit in a chair by the window, gazing at the landscape stretching out before him. It was a breathtaking view, the rolling hills covered in scrub, the blue mountains in the background, and the clear, almost cloudless sky. William felt a sense of peace fill his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. As he watched the sunset paint the sky with warm hues, William heard the neighing of horses coming from the neighboring property. Rising, he walked to the dividing fence, curious to meet his new neighbors. It was then that he spotted a woman, her brown hair shining in the twilight as she tended the animals. His heart skipped a beat, the image bringing back unexpected memories of his ex-wife, Margaret. However, as he approached, William realized that this woman was younger, her delicate features and posture denoting a strength and determination that Margaret had never demonstrated in life. She noticed his presence and, with a friendly smile, waved in his direction. "Good afternoon, neighbor. Welcome to your new home." William returned the gesture, suddenly feeling embarrassed by his curious remark. "Good afternoon, miss. I'm William Grant, your new neighbor." The woman walked to the fence, extending her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Grant. My name is Sarah Wilcox. My husband and I moved here a few months ago." William shook her hand gently, noting the firmness of her grip. "It's nice to meet you, Sarah. I hope we can get along as neighbors." "I'm sure you will," she replied, her eyes shining with sympathy. "If you need any help with your property, don't hesitate to ask." William nodded, feeling strangely comfortable in the woman's presence. There was something in her gaze and posture that inspired confidence, even though his wounds were still raw. As they said goodbye, William watched Sarah return to her duties, her walk determined and her posture elegant. He couldn't help but compare that image to that of his ex-wife Margaret, who carried on her shoulders the weight of the pain and disappointment he had inflicted upon her. Sighing, William returned to his new home, feeling somewhat comforted by the presence of his friendly neighbor. Perhaps there he could finally find the opportunity to redeem himself and rebuild his life. As night fell, William lit a few lamps, the soft light illuminating the simple but welcoming rooms. Sitting at the table, he carefully observed the space around him, imagining how he could make it his true home. Little by little, William began to glimpse a future that, until then, had seemed so distant. Perhaps on this new property he could put down roots, cultivate the land, and perhaps even open his heart to new connections. As the minutes turned into hours, William recalled the events that had brought him here. The pain of losing Margaret, the shame of his mistakes, and the determination to rebuild his life seemed to gradually give way to a sense of determination and hope. With this renewed energy, William got up and began exploring his new abode, imagining how he could make it a true home. Perhaps there he would finally find the peace he'd been searching for and the opportunity to rebuild his life, step by step. Over the next few days, William Grant settled into his new property, determined to rebuild his life there. As he made necessary repairs to his modest home and tended to his livestock, he felt a growing sense of belonging. Despite the loneliness that still consumed him at times, William found comfort in the quiet routine of the farm. These were moments of peace that contrasted with the emotional turmoil he had faced in recent years. One afternoon, as William was inspecting the paddock, he spotted his neighbor, Sarah Wilcox, walking toward him. She was carrying a basket full of freshly picked vegetables and fruit, her face lit with a welcoming smile. "Good afternoon, Mr. Grant. I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said, stopping near the fence. "My husband and I would like to welcome you to our community." William smiled back, suddenly feeling embarrassed. "Well, it's no trouble at all, Mrs. Wilcox. I should be the one thanking you for your kindness." Sarah held out the basket to him. "Please accept these supplies. It's the least we can do to welcome you properly." William hesitated for a moment, touched by the woman's kindness. "Thank you so much. That's very generous of you." He took the basket, inhaling the fresh aroma of the vegetables. "I hope you can settle in well here," Sarah said, her gaze filled with sympathy. "If you need any help, don't hesitate to ask." "I'd appreciate the offer," William replied, feeling a twinge of embarrassment. "I know I still have a lot to do to make this place a real home." Sarah nodded understandingly. "Don't worry, Mr. Grant. We've all been there. With time and hard work, this land will become yours." William watched in silence as Sarah said goodbye and returned to her own estate. This woman seemed to possess a kindness and strength of character that fascinated him. He couldn't help but compare her once again to his ex-wife Margaret. As he walked back to the house carrying the gift basket, William found himself wondering what his life would have been like if he had treated Margaret with the same compassion Sarah had shown. Perhaps, if he hadn't been so blind and arrogant, his wife would still be by his side, building a home together. Sighing, William entered the modest residence, placing the basket on the table. His eyes roamed the simple rooms, yet imbued with a sense of new beginnings. This was his new home, his chance to redeem himself for the mistakes of the past. In the following days, William devoted himself entirely to the farm work, finding refuge in the daily routine. Although loneliness still plagued him at times, he gradually felt more comfortable in that environment. During meals, William would often gaze at the neighboring house, imagining what life would be like for his new neighbor, Sarah's husband. He wondered if this man also carried a past filled with pain and regret, or if he had found the peace William so desperately sought. One afternoon, while William was repairing the roof of his house, he heard the sound of horses' hooves coming from the road. As he approached the fence, he saw a wagon slowly approaching, pulled by two sturdy animals. As William pulled up in front of his property, he recognized the man getting out of the vehicle. It was his new neighbor, Sarah's husband. He was a portly man with a stern face, but his eyes reflected a deep kindness. "Good afternoon, Mr. Grant," the man greeted, nodding. "My name is Thomas Wilcox. I hope I'm not disturbing you." William descended the stairs, feeling strangely intimidated by the man's presence. "No, it's no trouble at all, Mr. Wilcox. It's a pleasure to meet you." Thomas walked up to the fence, extending his hand in a friendly gesture. "I hear you're the new owner of this land. Welcome to our little community." William shook his neighbor's calloused hand firmly, feeling a pang of relief. "Thank you so much. I'm glad to be a part of this community." The two men exchanged a few words about the property and the work on the farm, and William couldn't help but notice the calm and wisdom reflected in Thomas's eyes. As he said goodbye, the neighbor offered him a ride into town, where William needed to buy some supplies. Accepting the invitation, William climbed into the wagon, grateful for the opportunity to get to know his new neighbor better. During the drive, the two men talked about their lives, and William gradually felt more comfortable in Thomas's presence. He noticed that despite his gruff appearance, his neighbor possessed a kind and compassionate nature. Upon arriving in town, Thomas invited William to share a meal at his home. Hesitant at first, William eventually accepted, feeling strangely comfortable in the family's company. Upon entering the Wilcox home, William was greeted by Sarah, who greeted him with a warm smile. She quickly introduced him to her two children, a boy of about 10 and a girl a few years younger. During the meal, William observed the family's dynamic, the way they interacted with affection and respect. The scene awakened a sense of nostalgia in him, reminding him of what he himself had lost years ago. Little by little, William felt increasingly comfortable in the company of this family. Sarah and Thomas treated him with a kindness he hadn't experienced in a long time, and his children looked at him curiously, but without a trace of judgment. When they finally said goodbye, William returned to his own home, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. That unexpected invitation had shown him that perhaps, in this new community, he could find the welcome and connection he so longed for. As he prepared dinner, William reminisced about the times he'd spent with the Wilcoxes, his spirit touched by the family's kindness and simplicity. For the first time since arriving in the region, he allowed himself to believe that perhaps he could build new bonds, and perhaps even find the redemption he so desperately sought. With this renewed energy, William lay down, grateful for the opportunity life had given him. This small community seemed to offer him a chance to start over, to bury the past, and look to the future with hope. He knew the path would not be easy, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face it. The following weeks on William Grant's new property passed at a leisurely and comforting pace. He devoted himself diligently to the farm work, finding satisfaction in the contact with the land and caring for the livestock. Little by little, William integrated into the small community, establishing an increasingly close friendship with his neighbors, the Wilcoxes. His visits to the family home became frequent, and he enjoyed the welcoming company of Sarah, Thomas, and their children. One afternoon, as William helped Thomas repair a section of fence, the neighbor watched him closely for a few moments before finally breaking the silence. "So, Grant, you haven't told me much about your life before moving here," Thomas said, his voice deep and calm. "If you don't mind, I'd like to know what brought you to this area." William felt a twinge of discomfort, but knew that sooner or later he would have to face this issue. Taking a deep breath, he decided to trust his new friend. "Well, Thomas, the truth is, I've made mistakes in the past that cost me dearly," William began, his voice thick with emotion. "I banished my wife from our home because I believed she was barren and incapable of giving me an heir." Thomas remained silent, his eyes conveying compassion as William continued his story. "6 years later, I met her by chance in a distant city, living a new life with a widowed doctor. She had adopted his orphaned son as her own, and the child was clearly mixed race." William swallowed, the guilt still weighing heavily on his shoulders. "It was then that I realized the infertility problem was mine, not hers." Thomas placed a hand on William's shoulder, his gaze understanding. "I understand. It must have been a painful experience, my friend." William nodded, the pain of his memories still vivid. "Yes, it was. I felt foolish for having been so blind and arrogant. When I saw Margaret's maternal love for that child, I realized how much I wasted by pushing her out of my life." Taking a deep breath, William continued, "So I decided to start over. I came here looking for a new chance, to find the redemption I so desperately needed." Thomas squeezed William's shoulder lightly, his face etched with empathy. "You made the right choice in coming here, Grant. This land and this community can offer you the opportunity to redeem yourself." William felt relief wash over him. "I hope so, Thomas. This chance to start over means a lot to me." The two men continued to work in silence for a few moments until Thomas turned back to William, his eyes shining with new determination. "Listen, Grant. If you'd like, I can introduce you to some people in the community who might be able to offer you work. I'm sure they'd be happy to have your experience." William felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "I would be very grateful, Thomas. Any help you can get would be appreciated." Thomas smiled, patting William on the back. "Great. I'll talk to some acquaintances in the next few days. I'm sure we can find something good for you." Over the next few days, William accompanied Thomas on several visits to other farmers and merchants in the area. To his surprise, they all welcomed his proposal with enthusiasm, impressed by his experience and hard work on his own property. Soon, William had secured a few temporary jobs, helping his new neighbors with various tasks, from tending livestock to assisting with the harvest. He was truly grateful for this opportunity to integrate into the community and prove his worth. In his spare time, William would often visit the Wilcox home, enjoying the family's warm company. Sarah always greeted him with a genuine smile, and the children treated him with a curiosity and respect that touched him. One afternoon, as William sat on the porch of the Wilcox house drinking tea, Sarah came over and sat beside him, her gaze conveying a familiar kindness. "So, Mr. Grant, I've noticed you've been integrating more and more into our community," she said, her voice soft. "I'm glad to see you're finding your place here." William nodded, a shy smile playing on his lips. "Yes, Mrs. Wilcox, I owe your family a great debt for welcoming me so kindly." Sarah placed a comforting hand over his, her green eyes shining with understanding. "We've all faced hardship and loss in our lives, Mr. Grant. The important thing is to have the courage to move forward." William felt a wave of emotion wash over him, touched by his neighbor's welcoming words. "You're right, Sarah, and please just call me William." The woman smiled, squeezing William's hand lightly. "Okay, William, and know that if you need to talk or vent, I'll be here to listen." William felt a pang of nostalgia as he remembered Margaret, but this time the pain seemed a little more bearable. Perhaps in that small community he really could find the redemption he so desperately sought. Over the next few days, William threw himself headfirst into his temporary work, dedicating himself wholeheartedly to each task assigned to him. Little by little, he earned the trust of his new neighbors, who treated him with respect and admiration. During one of his visits to the Wilcox home, William had the opportunity to get to know Thomas and Sarah's eldest son, a 10-year-old boy named Henry, better. The boy seemed fascinated by William's stories about life on the ranch, and the two quickly developed a friendship. One afternoon, as they walked together around the estate, Henry turned to William, his eyes shining with curiosity. "Mr. Grant, have you ever had children?" the boy asked, his voice full of innocence. William felt a pang of pain in his chest, memories of his failed marriage flooding back. He took a deep breath before answering, his voice thick with emotion. "No, Henry. Unfortunately, I never had the chance to have children." He paused, watching the boy's face carefully. "But now, I'm trying to start my life over and find a new purpose." Henry nodded slowly, his expression expressing understanding beyond his years. "I understand. I hope you can find the happiness you seek." William felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "Thank you so much, Henry. You and your family have been a great inspiration to me." Indeed, the two continued walking in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. For William, that brief exchange with his young neighbor had been a reminder that, even after so many mistakes, there was still the possibility of redemption and new meaning in life. Returning home, William sat on his porch, watching the sunset paint the sky with vibrant colors. He knew the road ahead would still be arduous, but for the first time in a long time, he felt truly hopeful. Time passed quickly for William Grant as he became increasingly integrated into the small-town community. His friendship with the Wilcoxes grew stronger with each visit, and he felt he had finally found a place where he could start his life over. One sunny afternoon, William was working on some repairs to his fence when he spotted Sarah Wilcox walking toward him, her face lit with a friendly smile. "Good afternoon, William. I was hoping to see you here," she said, coming closer. "Thomas and I would be delighted if you could join us for dinner this evening." William felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "I would be honored to accept your invitation, Sarah. I truly appreciate your kindness." Over the past few months, meals shared with the Wilcox family had become a source of comfort and guidance for William. In that welcoming environment, he felt increasingly comfortable sharing his worries and hopes. Upon arriving at the Wilcox home, William was warmly greeted by Thomas, who greeted him with a firm handshake. Together, they sat at the table where Sarah had prepared a delicious dinner. During the meal, conversation flowed naturally, and William felt drawn into the stories and anecdotes shared by his hosts. He noticed that little by little, the rigidity on his face seemed to melt away, giving way to a softer, more serene smile. After dinner, Thomas invited William for a walk around the estate grounds. As they walked through the fields, the older man turned to William, his expression thoughtful. "Tell me, William, how are you feeling about this new beginning?" Thomas asked, his deep voice thick with understanding. William hesitated for a moment, his hands moving nervously. "Well, to be honest, it's still a constant challenge. The memories of my past haunt me, and sometimes I feel like I don't deserve this chance to start over." Thomas nodded slowly, his gaze empathetic. "I understand, but know that you are not alone on this journey, my friend. We, your new family, are ready to give you all the support you need." William felt emotion well up in his throat. "I can't believe the kindness you've shown me. After everything I've done, I don't know how I could have deserved this." "We all make mistakes, William," Thomas said, placing a hand on the younger man's shoulder. "The important thing is to have the courage to face them and move forward, and you've demonstrated that strength every day." Thomas's words sank deep into William's heart, easing the weight of his guilt. He nodded, his expression reflecting a new determination. "You're right, Thomas. I need to keep moving forward, despite the difficulties. And this community, this family that you offer me, has been essential in helping me move forward." Thomas smiled, his hand lightly squeezing William's shoulder. "I'm glad to hear that, my friend. You're a good man, and you deserve this chance to rebuild your life." Walking back to the house, William felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Thomas's words had given him the strength he needed to face the ghosts of his past. Upon reaching the porch, he saw Sarah and her children playing together, their children's laughter echoing through the afternoon air. This domestic scene awakened in him a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. Over the next few days, William immersed himself in his daily activities, working hard both on his own property and on the tasks assigned to him by his neighbors. He felt increasingly comfortable in this community, finding satisfaction in the simple act of diligently devoting himself to a task. During one of his visits to the Wilcox home, William noticed that Henry, Thomas and Sarah's eldest son, seemed particularly interested in his stories about the ranch. The boy watched him closely, asking questions about daily farm life. On one occasion, William noticed Henry watching him with admiration as he helped Thomas mend a fence. Intrigued, he approached the boy, his gaze curious. "Is something wrong, Henry?" William asked, his tone gentle. The boy hesitated for a moment before answering in a timid voice. "No, Mr. Grant. It's just, I admire you so much. You seem so strong and brave, like a true Western man." William felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Those words, spoken with such innocence, touched him deeply. "Why, Henry, you shame me with your compliments," William said, smiling humbly. "I am nothing more than a man trying to make amends for past mistakes." The boy looked at him with his big brown eyes, his expression reflecting a wisdom beyond his years. "But you're getting there, aren't you? I can see it in your eyes." William nodded slowly, feeling deeply moved. "Yes, Henry. Thanks to your family and this community, I have found the strength to carry on." The two remained silent for a few moments, sharing a moment of sincere connection. William was grateful to have found this home, this family that offered him the opportunity to rebuild his life. As the sun began to set, William and Henry returned to the house, where they were greeted by Sarah and Thomas. In that moment, William knew he had finally found the place where he could find the redemption he had so long sought. Time passed quickly for William Grant as he became increasingly integrated into the small-town community. His friendship with the Wilcoxes grew stronger with each visit, and he felt he had finally found a place where he could start his life over. One sunny afternoon, William was working on some repairs to his fence when he spotted Sarah Wilcox walking toward him, her face lit with a friendly smile. "Good afternoon, William. I was hoping to see you here," she said, coming closer. "Thomas and I would be delighted if you could join us for dinner this evening." William felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "I would be honored to accept your invitation, Sarah. I truly appreciate your kindness." Over the past few months, meals shared with the Wilcox family had become a source of comfort and guidance for William. In that welcoming environment, he felt increasingly comfortable sharing his worries and hopes. Upon arriving at the Wilcox home, William was warmly greeted by Thomas, who greeted him with a firm handshake. Together, they sat at the table, where Sarah had prepared a delicious dinner. During the meal, conversation flowed naturally, and William felt drawn into the stories and anecdotes shared by his hosts. He noticed that, little by little, the rigidity on his face seemed to melt away, giving way to a softer, more serene smile. After dinner, Thomas invited William for a walk around the estate grounds. As they walked through the fields, the older man turned to William, his expression thoughtful. "Tell me, William, how are you feeling about this new beginning?" Thomas asked, his deep voice thick with understanding. William hesitated for a moment, his hands moving nervously. "Well, to be honest, it's still a constant challenge. The memories of my past haunt me, and sometimes I feel like I don't deserve this chance to start over." Thomas nodded slowly, his gaze empathetic. "I understand, but know that you are not alone on this journey, my friend. We, your new family, are ready to give you all the support you need." William felt emotion well up in his throat. "I can't believe the kindness you've shown me. After everything I've done, I don't know how I could have deserved this." "We all make mistakes, William," Thomas said, placing a hand on the younger man's shoulder. "The important thing is to have the courage to face them and move forward, and you've demonstrated that strength every day." Thomas's words sank deep into William's heart, easing the weight of his guilt. He nodded, his expression reflecting a new determination. "You're right, Thomas. I need to keep moving forward, despite the difficulties. And this community, this family that you offer me, has been essential in helping me move forward." Thomas smiled, his hand lightly squeezing William's shoulder. "I'm glad to hear that, my friend. You're a good man, and you deserve this chance to rebuild your life." Walking back to the house, William felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Thomas's words had given him the strength he needed to face the ghosts of his past. Upon reaching the porch, he saw Sarah and her children playing together, their children's laughter echoing through the afternoon air. This domestic scene awakened in him a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. Over the next few days, William immersed himself in his daily activities, working hard both on his own property and on the tasks assigned to him by his neighbors. He felt increasingly comfortable in this community, finding satisfaction in the simple act of diligently devoting himself to a task. During one of his visits to the Wilcox home, William noticed that Henry, Thomas, and Sarah's eldest son seemed particularly interested in his stories about the ranch. The boy watched him closely, asking questions about daily farm life. On one occasion, William noticed Henry watching him with admiration as he helped Thomas mend a fence. Intrigued, he approached the boy, his gaze curious. "Is something wrong, Henry?" William asked, his tone gentle. The boy hesitated for a moment before answering in a timid voice. "No, Mr. Grant, it's just, I admire you so much. You seem so strong and brave, like a true Western man." William felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Those words, spoken with such innocence, touched him deeply. "Why, Henry, you shame me with your compliments," William said, smiling humbly. "I am nothing more than a man trying to make amends for past mistakes." The boy looked at him with his big brown eyes, his expression reflecting a wisdom beyond his years. "But you're getting there, aren't you? I can see it in your eyes." William nodded slowly, feeling deeply moved. "Yes, Henry, Thanks to your family and this community, I have found the strength to carry on." The two remained silent for a few moments, sharing a moment of sincere connection. William was grateful to have found this home, this family that offered him the opportunity to rebuild his life. As the sun began to set, William and Henry returned to the house, where they were greeted by Sarah and Thomas. In that moment, William knew he had finally found the place where he could find the redemption he had so long sought. Time passed quickly for William Grant, as he became increasingly integrated into the small-town community. His friendship with the Wilcoxes grew stronger with each visit, and he felt he had finally found a place to rebuild his life. One day, a few months after his arrival, William decided to ride to the nearby town in search of new supplies. As he walked through the dusty streets, his eye was caught by a poster posted on the wall of a building. As he approached, William's heart raced as he read the ad. "Experienced cowboy wanted for large Colorado ranch." Without hesitation, he walked into the local office and introduced himself. The ranch owner, a burly man with a stern look, assessed William carefully. "So, you're the William Grant I heard about. I'm told you're a dedicated and trustworthy worker." William nodded, feeling a pang of nostalgia. "Yes, sir. I have many years of experience tending livestock and managing a property." The man was silent for a moment, before extending his hand in a friendly gesture. "Well, Grant, the job is yours if you want it. We need someone of your caliber to tend our flock." William gripped the calloused hand tightly, his mind racing. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for, the chance to return to his old craft, this time with the wisdom the years had brought him. Upon returning home, William found Thomas and Sarah sitting on the porch, enjoying the late afternoon. They noticed his pensive expression and asked him about his trip. "My friends, I have a proposition for you," William said, sitting down next to them. "A ranch in Colorado needs an experienced cowboy, and they've offered me the job." Thomas and Sarah looked at each other, their faces a mixture of surprise and concern. "William, are you considering accepting this offer?" Thomas asked, his voice deep. William nodded slowly. "Yes, I am. This is the opportunity I needed to rebuild my life and, who knows, finally find the redemption I've been searching for." Sarah placed a comforting hand over his, her green eyes shining with understanding. "We understand, William, but you have a home here with us. This community is your family now." William felt emotion well up in his throat. "I know, Sarah, and that's exactly why this decision is so difficult. You, Thomas, Sarah, and the children have become the family I never had." Thomas squeezed William's shoulder lightly, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. "You're a strong man, Grant. I know this is a difficult choice, but whatever you decide, we will support you." William nodded, his mind torn between the desire to move on and his attachment to the new life he had built. In the days that followed, he debated his options, knowing that each path would have consequences. Finally, after much deliberation, William made his decision. Gathering Thomas, Sarah, and the children, he told them his choice, his voice thick with emotion. "My friends, thank you for everything you've done for me. But I've come to the conclusion that I must take the job at the Colorado ranch." The Wilcoxes' expressions revealed a mixture of sadness and understanding. Sarah held his hand tightly, her eyes brimming with tears. "We understand, William. We know this is a chance for you to find the peace you so deserve." Thomas placed a hand on William's shoulder, his gaze beaming with pride. "You'll always have a home here, my friend, and we'll be rooting for you, wherever your journey takes you." William felt tears stream down his face, moved by the generosity of this family that had become so important in his life. He hugged them one by one, promising to return to visit them whenever he could. In the following days, William prepared for his departure, liquidating his possessions and organizing his move. As the time to leave the community approached, he felt a mixture of sadness and determination. On the day of his farewell, William made a point of visiting each of his neighbors and friends, expressing his gratitude for all the support and welcome he had received. His last words were to the Wilcox family, who were waiting for him on the porch of his home. "I'll never forget everything you've done for me," William said, his eyes filled with emotion. "You gave me a chance to start over, and you taught me that it's possible to find redemption even after the worst mistakes." Sarah hugged him tenderly, her tears wetting William's shoulder. "We know that, my friend, and we will always be here, waiting for your return." Thomas shook William's hand firmly, his eyes shining with pride. "Good luck, Grant. May you find the peace you so deserve on that ranch." William nodded, feeling a mixture of sadness and determination. Mounting his horse, he took one last look at the community that had become his home before setting off toward Colorado, carrying in his heart the gratitude and love these people had given him. As the west wind blew in his face, William knew that, although he was leaving behind this haven of peace, he was carrying with him the strength and hope needed to face the challenges that lay ahead. His journey toward redemption had only just begun.